So we have Abraham Drost, who's joining us today. He is the CEO of Clean Air Metals and has a great track record of success, including with Sabina Gold and Silver, Carlisle Goldfields, and Premier Royalty. Management put out a press release this morning on some pretty significant drill results. So I think we'll just go do a quick overview of the assets and discuss this morning's press release, which highlights some of the results that came out of the Phase 1 drilling program, along with 6 historical results that were from Rio Tinto. Afterwards, we'll open up the conversation to some Q&A, so feel free to input some questions in the Q&A box below. Hi, Abraham. How are you?
Yes. Good morning, Tina. Thank you very much. I'm well. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
Good results out this morning. I'm excited to hear a little bit more about it.
Indeed, yes. So I do have a PowerPoint. I'm happy to share my screen if that's appropriate at this point. So yeah, we very gratified to put out the press release this morning, and you know, it is a kind of a normal course update. Although I must say we're all pretty pleased internally with the quality of the intercepts that we obtained from the you know, the initial round of drilling. Well, I mean, it's 2 holes that we're on hole 5, I have to tell you. Just finishing up hole 5, heading on to hole 6. But we also had 6 holes from Rio Tinto that were drilled back in 2011 and 12. And so, you know, that's 8 holes with the 2 that we had full assays for. And of course, with the flow-through financing, our assays were embargoed with the lab as well. We didn't want to be offside with material undisclosed information. So the moment, you know, the flow-through was closing yesterday, you know, we hustled and put this press release together to give the market a sense of what we're dealing with. And just to recap then, Clean Air Metals was formed to complete the consolidation of the Thunder Bay North and Escape Lake projects in the Thunder Bay area where I'm sitting today. And I will be making some forward-looking statements today. And while I think of it, my colleague Jim Gallagher sends his regrets. He wasn't able to attend the webinar, so I'll be bringing the remarks forward on behalf of the company. Normally, Jim is pleased to sit in on these things, and certainly I'll show you Jim's contact information at the end, and he's always happy to take calls. Now, so we're located just north of Thunder Bay, and it was essentially 2 former properties, one Thunder Bay North, which was owned by Panoramic of Australia, the other Escape Lake, which was owned by Rio Tinto, and then Benton Resources, BEX on the TSXV, did a deal with Benton last October, did a deal with Rio last October, whereby they paid them $3 million cash as a half down payment to lock up the Escape Lake project, which was internal to, and is now continues to be internal to, but all under one owner, the Thunder Bay North project. And you'll see what I mean by that momentarily. Here it is. So in essence, taking you to the north, the lakehead now, just north of Lake Superior, you see Thunder Bay there in the very low center part of your screen. That is literally the Bay of Thunder Bay, and Black Bay beside it. But the Trans-Canada Highway runs along and around the lake. That's why it's an hour and 15-minute flight and a 15-hour drive, because you have to drive around the lake. But there you have it. The green concessions with the little red square in it is now 100% Clean Air Metals, as the consolidation that I explained. And up to the northwest, in the northwest quadrant, is the Lac des Îles mine property. And Lac des Îles mine is now owned and operated by Impala Canada, a subsidiary of Impala Platinum of South Africa. They bought the asset for $1 billion last December. And on the day of closing, Jim Gallagher came to our office in Thunder Bay at 1004 Alloy Drive, and was given the technical update on the project and the history and so forth. And 3 days later, decided to jump in as executive chairman. And so Jim and I formed the nucleus of the management team going forward. But I will say, current lake then, or the Thunder Bay North deposit, the larger green concession was 9 million. It has a resource on it, which I'm going to speak more about. That's a current lake deposit. And then the Escape Lake was right on the guts of the system, a brand new discovery made by Rio Tinto, which is the subject of our press release today. And so let's get into some technical slides. Here we have a Google Earth map of basically a large intrusive complex outlined in green. Okay, the horizontal stretch is about 10 kilometers, and it is along what we call the Escape Lake Fault. That was a permeability pathway along which various intrusions and so forth intruded during Proterozoic times as part of the mid-continent development of the mid-continent rift, that underlies Lake Superior. So there was a huge magmatic event, and the two appendages that extend to the north and northwest from that horizontal structure, east-west structure, are two magma conduits, which I'm going to show you another picture of. This is really just the surface expression of them. They are Norilsk-style conduits. They have a lot of petrographic and petrologic similarities with Norilsk-type deposits. You can see the one to the right has 700 drill hole collars on it. That is the historic resource, the historic estimate that we refer to in the release. 9.8 million tons indicated in open pit and underground configuration. I'll show you some explanatory notes on that later in the presentation. But to the west of it is the Escape Lake conduit. Okay, so a parallel structure, a twin structure that has about 1/10 of the drilling on it. And more particularly, the block sold to Clean Air Metals through Benton is that yellow block by Rio. That's $6 million, $3 million down. Why? Because they made a discovery. However, those results were never brought to light in a public market. So now we are bringing them to light, fully validated for the first time, and that's part of our that's part of our accomplishment with this particular release. And so, what do magma conduits look like? Well, here you have, in essence, lithological shells of these two conduits. So you have on the right, you have the current lake intrusion, or the current lake conduit, which is anchored by the intrusion to the southeast, which in itself is a fascinating structure, and we think potential host for some massive sulfides, which I'm going to say a little bit more about. Now, the one to the left, within the white square, is the subject of today's press release. That's the Escape Lake high-grade zone and the beginning of the conduit that extends up to the north west. And that particular zone then is fully contained within the Escape Lake intrusion. Okay, so these are Norilsk-style conduits. And, we're working on phase 1 right now. Ultimately, I expect we'll announce phase 2 now that we've closed a flow through yesterday, 6.7 million. But right now we're working on phase 1. Okay, and that's the yellow collars that you see here. And there's we knew from the 6 drill holes that had previously intersected this zone that were drilled by Rio Tinto in 2011 and 12, that there was in fact a significant body of mineralization down there. But of course we didn't know how significant till we had a chance to validate all the core, relog it, resample it, go through the QA, the original QA/QC data from ALS Labs, which is the same ones they used, the ones we're using today. A lot of consistency here, but in essence, we brought that data set into our database, and we effectively own those drill holes now, and that's the subject of today's release. And so just to give you a little bit of a sense of where we sit, the lay of the land. So phase 1 here is the yellow-orange collars. Phase 2, to be announced at a later date, extends off to the northwest along that corridor. We can see some green collars there, some previous drilling by Rio, but quite frankly, and so they gave us a taste of what's to come. But right now, everything's open laterally and along strike to the northwest, and the southeast. Yeah, so here's one of the figures out of today's press release. What we also have within the Escape Lake intrusion, the mineralized body, which we call the Escape Lake high-grade zone, or the escape lake zone, is borehole EM done on all the holes. Includes the Rio holes, includes our holes. What you see in gray there is the borehole EM plate. And that allows us to make some interpretation on the intercepts that we've received. The clean air intercepts here are the ones in magenta, and the previous Rio intercepts are the ones in red, histogram type intercepts in terms of our rendition here. But as you can see, our interpretation is that this is open to the north-northwest, the south-southeast, and we also know that we have significant potential laterally as well. But that will require, a completion of phase one. We're 5 holes, 6 holes. We're just starting our 6th hole. As I said, we lost the first one, so it's really our 5th hole. And we're planning to drill 15 to 20, and then and then potentially bring in a second drill to get started on phase 2 as well. So stay tuned for that. But in essence, now I'm going to let's see, anything else here that I need to emphasize? Obviously, you see figure 1 there, or table 1, inset into the thing. Let's go to a larger version of that. And in essence, the clean air holes are very, in green here, are very consistent with, with the original Rio drilling, except for one notable difference. Typically, using a 1 gram cutoff, Rio holes were, sort of, 33 meters, 25 meters, 28 meters, 30 meters. And, hole 2, we had a 30-meter intercept with an included higher grade intercept of 11 meters at 7.5 grams combined platinum palladium. I'll just remind the audience here that, based on today's US dollar prices, that's $600 rock just based on platinum palladium content. That's gross metal value. That doesn't even account for the copper nickel at 2.3% combined. The breakdown is beside that. But more to the point, and kind of a headliner for us, was hole number 3, with 78 meters of 3.84 grams per ton combined platinum palladium, and roughly combined gross metal value is $85. So you're looking at about $250 rock there, US. But internal to that is a 20-meter core of, again, consistent values with some of the high grade we're seeing in the Rio holes, over 7.5 grams combined platinum palladium, over 2% copper nickel. Well, that is, of course, something that you can build tonnage on with intercepts like that, and you have some very nice high-grade material that obviously we'll be considering in the future. And Jim, being a mining engineer, he's always on the lookout for, to stimulate that internal discussion on potential development. But I want to emphasize, this is very much an advanced exploration project at this stage, and we certainly have no conclusions today about how we would tackle this, although it can give you some insights as to some, our internal thinking. But here we have on the next slide then, just a view that really shows all the intercepts in kind of a clear light here with histogram assays and so forth. You can see that there is a nice high-grade core developing to the system. It so happens that drill hole ELR 20 number 003, a clean air hole, was mineralized, was strongly mineralized from top to bottom, 78 meters. And so, we hit a sweet spot there, and, the next release will have likely have holes 3, 4, 5, and possibly 6. So we'll obviously be following up that, but we also now, these are confirmatory in nature. We had to do that at the outset. But we're also looking forward to stepping out as well, obviously, along strike and laterally, and that is part of the program here for phase 1, and certainly for phase 2 as well. And just want to point out to you, I made a few comments, and so actually, let me back up. The escape lake zone you see to the left there, a little call out, that's one of the original Rio intercepts 33 meters at 7.28 grams. That's really part of the core that we see in hole 78, in hole number 3, the 78-meter hole with a 20-meter core. Roughly similar grades, for both platinum, palladium, copper, nickel. But really, this is an old slide here, and it'll be updated. But what we're really showing there is where that slug fits in, where that slug of mineralization in the escape lake intrusion fits in relative to the current lake deposit, on which we report the historic estimate. Okay. So there it is above, and you see the grade distribution along that particular structure. 647 drill holes defining a resource. That resource was done by AMEC in 2012. It's a very credible resource, but we are required to call it historic at this point, so that's fine, because it was really a combination of open pit and underground. And I can suggest to you today that given our sensitivities to our First Nation partners and the permitting realities around putting open pits on top of lakes and draining lakes and so forth, that's just a permitting challenge that we do not wish to, we're not entertaining. And it was a very high strip as well, about 9.9 to 1. So at the end of the day, look, you see a shallow plunge on this particular conduit. Think ramp access, think selective, underground mining in the red areas, the red and yellow areas. And look at Escape Lake, it's all red so far. I mean, it's, so there's going to be some very interesting discussions, medium to long term. And, I should back up here to the right. Well, actually in the center, you see the Beaver Lake Zone. Now, I do touch on this in the press release. We talk about high tenor massive sulfides. Well, Beaver Lake Zone, there's a half a dozen occurrences of high tenor massive sulfides, and here's the best one. They're all in the 2 to 3 ounce range, but this is 2.6 meters at essentially 3 ounces combined platinum palladium and about a half gram gold, and just under 15% copper nickel. Well, my word, like what's going on here? And there's a half a dozen of these, and they show up in EM as well. And then there's and I'll show you what that looks like. This was on display at the PDAC this past March at the Clean Air booth. And we've had our experts look at this, and they believe that these are transported sulfides, that in fact they were entrained in the system from another location and injected effectively into their current location. You can see that by the sharp contacts with the surrounding, the peridotite and gabbros that host the mineralization. Normally you would see a gradation into massive sulfides from net texture. You're not seeing that here. You're seeing disseminated, massive. And that's injected, and it was also highly fractionated and developed in a larger pool somewhere else and was entrained by the magma as it came through. Somebody has called these conduits horizontal kimberlites. Yeah, it's a bit of a misnomer, but it's accurate in the sense that in kimberlites, magma's entrained diamonds from a stability layer in the mantle. And in this case, magma's entrained massive sulfides, and we are looking for the source. That is phase 3, but that's not the low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit is the subject of today's press release. So just a little bit about the historic estimate. Here it is. It's on our website. So if you go to the website at cleanairmetals.ca and go to the corporate presentation, you'll see this slide, and you'll see this slide as well, which is a full explanation of how the resource was calculated, all the assumptions that went into the platinum equivalent grade, which is 2.3 grams. The metal prices that were used, and I want to point out in 2012, palladium was $512 an ounce, platinum was $15.95. So obviously things have changed and will be updated in the medium term. But that's an internal discussion for now. So, so there you have it. We've got some critical mass here at Current Lake. We've got a brand new exploration trend, because this is really the first time it's being brought to the market in a consistent, validated manner. And this is the starting point for the development of the Escape Lake horizon, which ultimately, in terms of a forward-looking statement, vision of management is to bring both together for a global 43-101 resource within 12 to 18 months. Meanwhile, there's going to be drill results now that we're fully funded with flow through and so forth, and we have just about 9 million in hard dollars on the books as well. You're going to see regular updates from the field on drilling right through till Christmas, I expect. And so that brings us to the last slide. There's Jim's direct number if you want to call him. And my direct line as well, and also our VP Corp Dev based in Vancouver, Carson Phillips. He's always happy to take your calls as well. Email addresses. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thanks, Abraham. Well, that was a great update. I'd love to kind of talk about the drill results a little bit more.
Sure.
We can open it up to Q&A as well if anyone has any questions, but in terms of the drill results that were put out today, the depths were kind of in the 350 to 450 range, and you mentioned in the press release drilling to 500 to 600 meters.
Yep.
So I'm curious to know kind of what your thoughts are on going down a little bit deeper, and if you found anything in these results that are making you go a little bit deeper.
Yeah, great question. And part of the reason we drilled to 600 is because we want to shoot back with borehole EM. So you gotta basically go right through the intrusion and then shoot back, kind of like doing a borehole EM selfie. Okay. So in any event, that's the strategy. We are having a little trouble with blocky ground in the Archean sediments from 0 to 200 meters. So we're cementing those right now to make sure, and like we're getting like several faults, blocky ground in the first 200 meters. Once we hit the intrusion, which is a gabbroperidotite, ultramafic type intrusion, which then contains the mineralization. Excuse me. It's clear sailing. I mean, it's essentially undeformed rock, Proterozoic, but the Archean rocks are quite badly broken. So we want to break on through to the other side, shoot back, and get a really good picture from the borehole EM, which obviously is really guiding exploration at this point. So then. So that's the reason for the elevated holes. We usually hit the zone, the mineralization, the sulfides at about 390, and you could see 78 meters of continuous mineralization in borehole number 3, for example. So we're getting great visuals from subsequent drilling, and again, time will tell, but I expect it'll be 3 to 4 weeks and we'll have our next release out.
And yeah, it's pretty interesting to see the continuity of the results as well. Is it consistent with your expectations, or?
Well, look, we knew. I mean, obviously Benton knew the Escape Lake Zone was special, but they bet the farm and paid $3 million to Rio back in October to lock it up. So that was stunning. Ultimately, Regency Gold Corp, that became Clean Air, was the preferred vehicle to put this into. Jim and I were recruited in November, December, largely on the strength of the Rio results that have been fully validated now and brought forward in a cohesive press release. That had never happened before. I mean, Benton did make some references to it in their October press releases, and so, but at the end of the day, those data sets needed to be fully validated. And look, Rio's Rio. They did a great job, but they were also prospecting with a drill. They were hitting mag targets, and we are now doing systematic delineation of that high-grade zone in phase 1 drilling.
And you mentioned potentially adding a second rig. When would you make a decision like that?
Look, yeah, that's a subsequent, that's a forward-looking statement here at this point, but I can tell you now that we've closed the flow through, we're looking at those options, and we'll inform the market here, I expect, in the short term.
Okay. And maybe we can take a minute just to talk about the accessibility of the asset, because from my understanding, it's about a half hour from where you are right now.
Yes, I mean, that for me is immensely gratifying to have a project in my backyard where I can literally go to the core shack and talk with the geologist, hold the core, and I'm a geologist myself. I've logged many kilometers of core in my time on different projects, through the 90s and so forth. I was with the OGS in the early 2000s, and then recruited by Ewan Downey to come in as president of Sabina Gold and Silver. And I should point out that it's now fully disclosed on CDAR, and in the circular that's gone out is that Ewan is going to be joining our board here as director number 5 on June the 25th. So we're looking forward to that. That'll be a separate announcement once the vote has taken place. But yeah, so look, Ewan and I are going to be working together again. We did Sabina, we did Premier Royalty. They were both pretty good passes. And look, we're both extremely excited about this particular asset, because I want to just emphasize, it wasn't for sale. This was a relationship-driven transaction based on a very strong relationship between Benton Resources and Rio Tinto. They still do deals together. Benton's a project generator. Rio likes their assets and does deals with Benton. So this is active and ongoing, and it was a case of, look, okay, you want to do a deal on this one over here? How about doing me a deal on this one over there, that which happened to be Escape Lake? And they said, okay. So it was not like anyone else had a crack at it. So this is truly remarkable. And this was essentially an inventoried project. And sometimes companies put things on the shelf and wait for new direction, a new champion, to take it on. And as it turns out, Clean Air is that champion, Benton and Clean Air.
You kind of touched on Jim's role and you and Downey joining the board as well, but you also have a really good exploration team. So I think it'd be interesting for people to hear a little bit about that team and their history at Voisey's Bay. And
yes, thank you.
About a little bit.
Absolutely, Tina. So yeah, we have a couple of VPs. Don Lambswood, VP Exploration, and basically retired from as exploration manager of Valet at Voisey's Bay. She was the original project geologist with Archean Resources at the sale of the Voisey's Bay asset to Diamond Fields, and we all know how that turned out. Dawn is an expert in magma conduit systems. She's bringing a lot of the knowledge picked up at Voisey's Bay to bringing that to bear on the Thunder Bay North project, very active. She brings a team. She brought a team with her. Brian Bengert of Beefield Geophysics, who is a very strong magma conduit guy, worked at Voisey's Bay, works for other projects with magma conduits. He's a consultant. He's free to go and consult where he likes. But we're talking about some very interesting geophysics here being brought to bear on the project, magnetotellurics, to fully divine the architecture of our intrusions and show potential traps for sulfides. It's all about the massive sulfides at this point. And because we know where the escape lake zone is, and we have to drill it off. I call that the low-hanging fruit. But the real blue sky upside here is the massive sulfides. We know they're in the system because we've already intersected them at Current Lake. We have all that core. And so, and then Al McTavish, VP in waiting, actually, project manager for Panoramic, been with the project for 12 years. Very shortly, we're just negotiating his EA now, but he'll be named as vice president and project manager. Al was personally supervised, and our senior geologist Justin Johnson personally supervised all 647 holes in that resource. So at Current Lake. So suffice it to say, a strong pair of hands there, and just itching to get at Escape Lake. So they're really, really excited about this. And so that's our technical team based at 1004 Alloy Drive in Thunder Bay. It's a 10-minute drive from my home. And certainly, during COVID, of course, we've been keeping a low profile. That's why we started with one drill. It was originally going to be 2 drills in a camp and have everybody out there on site. And but when COVID came along, we really scaled back. I mean, camps are like cruise ships, and we don't want to be in the cruise ship business. We didn't want to be in the camp business. And so we scaled back to 1 drill. The core shack and the drill are separate. It's working well, and we really feel comfortable now that we have good protocols in place, personal protective equipment and so forth, and the guys are really being good about adhering to the policy.
So speaking about COVID, maybe we can do a quick recap of the pricing environment last month, and I know there were some shutdowns as a result of COVID, so can we talk a little bit about the recovery on that side and where the pricing stands right now?
Where the what stands right now, sorry?
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, palladium pricing?
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, look, I mean, just to put COVID to rest here, I mean, it's still out there. We're being very careful. Um, we use the PPEs, but we have been essential service from day one. The office has been open on a restricted basis, and the drill has been operating since we announced on May 22nd. So, you know, at the end of the day, look, it's, you know, we are operating under restrictions, but we are free to work. We're being extremely careful and very respectful, and so that is what it is, and I don't expect that to change. I mean, what I liked about the Ontario government's approach to COVID was that, with respect to essential businesses, mineral exploration was regarded as essential and part of the global mineral supply chain. So very cool, but you just don't want to be in the camp business. So we know we don't have a camp. So it was the camps that were shutting down mine sites. That was the problem. They couldn't control it in those camps. So that's a little bit like cruise ships, and you know but I don't mean to be flippant. But in any event, palladium pricing, look, that's Jim's baby. He's been talking about it now for years. He says, you know, 5 years ago, you know, 500 to 700 an ounce. It was good, but people kind of like were picking their teeth through the presentation. Last couple of years, it got a little easier. I mean, in 2017, Sibanye bought Stillwater. Great, a very intelligent purchase because last year they were the world's top performing gold company on the back of revenues, free cash flow from Stillwater. But that was on the back of a Johnson Matthey prediction in 2016 that palladium would go to $2,000 by 2020 because they saw the writing on the wall. Johnson Matthey, we've all heard of them, former refiners, now the largest manufacturer of catalytic converters in the world. They have a strong pulse on the market, but even they right now with COVID and the shutdowns of the mines, you know, the struggling automotive sector, they're not making predictions. I will say this, palladium's making a prediction. It's still well over 1,800 on the last trade and $2,000 on the ask and in the futures market. So, I mean, that's really a function of increasingly stringent environmental restrictions in China, the EU, and North America, and that's not going away. It's a climate, we call it the climate change imperative. It's not going away, but while the EV revolution takes place over the next couple decades, it'll still only get to 60% penetration by many, you know, credible estimates. So, and in the meantime, platinum palladium control tailpipe emissions. Nickel is a battery metal and copper is the conductor for all EVs. We think this suite is uniquely positioned to commodities really to power the EV revolution and also help us control emissions while we get there.
And it seems pretty clear that investors feel the same way given the oversubscribed flow-through financing. And it closed pretty quickly. So maybe we can touch on the financing a little bit as well.
Yeah, extremely gratifying, Tina. We did a 20-cent round in February. That was a unit, 20-cent unit, a share and a half warrant, 30-cent warrant for 2 years. Those warrants are in the money. It was very attractively priced because, you know, it was a new deal. Nobody had heard about Escape Lake really before, and you know, you just had to price it super attractively, and we did. And you know, the interesting thing was our EV coming out of the gate was 15 million, which is the total purchase price of Current Lake and Escape Lake. So in other words, it was priced for perfection. I mean, it was priced at the asset value, and that was the enterprise value, was the asset value. And then we had 10 million of cash coming out of the gate. So look, what the flow through, I think, showed with the announcement just 2 to 3 weeks ago now and closed yesterday, 6.7 million, just a straight flow through share, not charity, regular flow through, 50 cents a share. That was after 3 days trading. We were at 46 cents. So a lot of pent up demand for the issue. Very gratifying to lock in a 50-cent flow through, but I think we can see from the press release that the value's there, and look, we're going to do our best for our shareholders.
And a lot of the 20-cent round was largely institutional. Is it a similar makeup for the flow through as well, or were a lot of new investors coming in?
Yeah, so in the February round, 94 placees, 24 institutional that hold 50% of the stock today, 126 million shares issued. The flow through now, another 13.4 million. So we're up to basically 139, just under 140 million basic right now, issued and outstanding. And yeah, with respect to the main uptake of the flow through, yeah, it was 5 funds, flow through funds essentially. It was the flow through funds that really came on board. Happy for the support, and obviously, but 6.7 million buys at by our budgeting internally with road access and so forth. It's about 200 meters, so that buys you 30,000 meters of drilling. So I'd hate to be trying to do that with one drill. Let's put it that way.
Okay, great. Well, sounds good. Looking forward to more drill results coming out of this program. So you said 3 to 4 weeks. Kind of a timeline?
Yeah, look, I think, look, I mean, I think we can count on a monthly release going forward here. I mean, I think, it's the complete suite of elements is fairly time consuming. We were getting 10 days on a rush for these ones. Well, you can't rush in perpetuity, right? So otherwise you're the boy that called wolf, right? So so at the end of the day, yeah, we're hoping for a monthly turnaround on assay updates. Yep, and this is right through till Christmas now, based on the funding that we've just received. We're very appreciative of.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for participating and presenting and giving us an update. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Tina. Very much appreciated as well. All the best.